Commander Michael Hayes woke up at 5:30 in the morning, just like he had done for the past 23 years. His alarm didn't even need to go off anymore. His body just knew when it was time to get up. He rolled out of bed, laced up his running shoes, and hit the streets while most of the neighborhood was still sleeping. The cool morning air felt good in his lungs as he ran his usual 5-mile route. Past the elementary school, around the park, down by the waterfront, and back home. His mind was clear during these runs. No stress from work. No thinking about the dozens of sailors under his command. No worrying about the endless paperwork waiting on his desk. Just him, the road, and the rhythm of his feet hitting the pavement. After his shower, Michael put on his uniform with practiced precision. Every button in the right place, every crease sharp and clean. He'd been doing this so long that he could probably get dressed in the dark. He grabbed his keys, checked his watch, and headed out the door. The cafe was 3 blocks from the naval base. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small place with 6 tables and a counter that had seen better days. But they made good coffee, and more importantly, they were fast. Michael didn't have time to wait in long lines at those trendy coffee shops where people spent 10 minutes ordering drinks with 5 different ingredients. The bell above the door jingled as he walked in. It was 0645, which meant he had exactly 15 minutes before he needed to be at his desk. The morning crowd was already there. A couple of nurses from the hospital next door, an older man who Michael saw there every day but had never spoken to, and 2 college kids who looked like they'd been up all night studying. "Morning." "Commander," called out Sophia from behind the counter. She was already holding a paper cup, steam rising from the lid. "Morning," Michael replied, reaching for his wallet. This was their routine. She'd have his coffee ready before he even made it to the counter. Black, no sugar, no cream, nothing fancy. Just coffee the way it was meant to be drunk. He appreciated that she remembered. In a world where everything seemed complicated, this simple gesture felt like a small kindness. Michael handed her a $5 bill and told her to keep the change like he always did. Sophia smiled and thanked him. She was young, probably late 20s or early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and an apron that was dusted with what looked like flour or powdered sugar. She must help with the baking too, not just the coffee. As Sophia passed him the cup, something caught the light. A flash of silver on her left hand. Michael's eyes fixed on it without meaning to. It was a ring on her middle finger. Not an engagement ring or wedding band, but something else. Something that made his heart stop for just a second. The ring was simple silver with a pattern woven into it. Not just any pattern, though. A specific kind of knotwork that twisted and looped in on itself, intricate and delicate. Michael had seen that exact design before. He'd seen it in a photograph that his mother had held on to until the day she died. His mother had passed away 2 years ago, but he could still picture her in that hospital bed, her hands weak and shaking as she pulled a small envelope from under her pillow. Inside was a single photograph, old and faded, the colors washed out with time. It showed a baby, maybe a few months old, with a tiny silver ring on a chain around her neck. The same ring, the same pattern. His mom had cried as she told him the story. How she'd gotten pregnant when she was just 17. How her parents had made her give the baby up for adoption. How she'd never held her daughter, never heard her cry, never got to say goodbye. The only thing she'd been allowed to do was leave that ring with the adoption agency, hoping that somehow, someday, her daughter would know she'd been loved. Michael's throat felt tight. His mother had made him promise to try to find his sister. She'd given him what little information she had, which wasn't much. A closed adoption from 40 years ago, records sealed tight, and just that photograph as proof that any of it had been real. He'd tried. Of course he'd tried. He'd contacted the adoption agency, but they wouldn't budge. Privacy laws, they'd said. Without both parties actively searching and consenting, they couldn't release any information. He'd hit wall after wall until he'd finally had to accept that some promises were impossible to keep. But now, standing in this cafe with his coffee growing cold in his hand, Michael stared at that ring and felt like he couldn't breathe. Sophia must have noticed him looking because her expression changed. The friendly smile faded, replaced by something cautious, almost defensive. She pulled her hand back slightly and covered the ring with her other hand. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Michael opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What was he supposed to say? That she might be his sister? That the ring on her finger could be the same one from a 40-year-old photograph? It sounded crazy even in his own head. She'd think he was losing his mind, No, sorry, I thought I recognized. He trailed off, not able to finish the sentence, not able to make sense of the thoughts racing through his brain. Sophia looked uncomfortable now. She stepped back from the counter a little, and Michael realized he was probably scaring her. A military commander twice her size staring at her hand, unable to form complete sentences. This wasn't how he'd imagined finding his sister would go. If this was even his sister, it might not be. Lots of rings looked similar. This could be nothing but a coincidence and his own desperate hoping. I should go, Michael said quickly. Thanks for the coffee. He turned and walked out before she could respond, the bell jingling again as the door swung shut behind him. Outside, he stood on the sidewalk and tried to collect himself. His hand was shaking slightly as he brought the coffee to his lips. It was good coffee, like always, but he barely tasted it. Michael made himself start walking toward the base. He had responsibilities. Meetings to run, decisions to make, people counting on him. He couldn't afford to fall apart over a ring that might mean nothing. But as he walked, he couldn't stop thinking about it. The pattern was so specific, so unusual. What were the odds? And Sophia's reaction when he'd stared at it. The way she'd covered it protectively, like it meant something to her. Like it was important. All through the morning, Michael tried to focus on his work. He sat through a budget meeting and didn't hear half of what was said. He reviewed reports and had to read the same paragraph 3 times. His second-in-command asked him twice if he was feeling all right. Just didn't sleep well, Michael lied. But it wasn't lack of sleep that had him distracted. It was the thought that maybe, just maybe, his mother's dying wish might not be impossible after all. Maybe the sister he'd never known had been right there, 3 blocks from his office, handing him coffee every morning for the past 6 months. He had to know. He had to find out for sure. But how do you ask someone if they might be your long-lost sister without sounding like you've completely lost your mind? How do you explain something that seemed too impossible to be true? Michael looked at the clock. It was barely noon, but it felt like the longest day of his life. He had 6 more hours before his shift ended. 6 more hours before he could go back to that cafe and try to find the courage to ask the questions that might change everything. His mother's face flashed in his memory, the hope in her eyes when she'd made him promise to search, the regret she'd carried for 40 years, the what-ifs that had haunted her until the end. Michael took a deep breath and tried to focus on the paperwork in front of him. But his mind kept drifting back to that silver ring, catching the light as Sophia handed him his morning coffee. A small thing, really, just a piece of jewelry. But sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest stories. Sometimes they hold the answers to questions you've been asking your whole life without even knowing it. Michael couldn't concentrate for the rest of that day. During the afternoon briefing, one of his officers had to repeat a question twice before it registered. He caught himself staring at his computer screen without actually reading anything on it. His mind kept circling back to that ring, to the impossible possibility that he'd found the sister he'd been searching for. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Michael had made a decision. He was going back to the cafe. He had to know. Even if it made him look foolish, even if it was just a coincidence, he couldn't leave this alone. His mother had spent 40 years wondering about the daughter she'd given up. He owed it to her memory to at least ask the question, but he didn't go right at 5. That would be too obvious, too desperate. Instead, he went home, changed out of his uniform into jeans and a plain shirt, and waited. He paced around his apartment, practicing what he'd say. Everything sounded wrong in his head. Too forward, too strange, too much like the opening line of a bad movie. At 7 o'clock, Michael finally worked up the courage to walk back to the cafe. The evening crowd had thinned out. Through the window, he could see Sophia wiping down tables. There were only 2 other customers, both focused on their laptops. It was now or never. The bell jingled as he entered. Sophia looked up and her expression shifted when she saw him. Not quite suspicious, but cautious. Guarded. He'd made her uncomfortable that morning, and she hadn't forgotten it. "We're closing in 20 minutes, she said. Not unkindly, but not exactly warm either. "I know, Could I talk to you for a minute? I owe you an explanation for this morning." Sophia set down her cleaning cloth and crossed her arms. "Okay," Michael's mouth felt dry. This was harder than giving orders to 100 sailors. "This is going to sound strange, and I'm sorry if I'm way off base here. But that ring you're wearing, can I ask you where you got it?" Her hand moved instinctively to cover the ring again, Why do you want to know? Because my mother had a picture of that exact ring. She kept it with her until she died 2 years ago. Michael's voice cracked a little on the last part. She told me about a daughter she gave up for adoption when she was 17. 40 years ago. The ring was the only thing she was allowed to leave with the baby. Sophia's face went pale. Her arms dropped to her sides and she took a step backward, steadying herself against the counter. What? What are you saying? I'm saying I think you might be my sister. The words hung in the air between them. One of the laptop customers glanced over, picking up on the tension, then quickly looked back at his screen. The coffee machine hummed in the background. Outside, cars drove past, completely unaware that inside this small cafe, 2 lives were potentially about to change forever. Sophia shook her head slowly. That's impossible. I mean, what are the odds? I know it sounds crazy, but that ring, the pattern, it's too specific. I've never seen another one like it. Sophia looked down at her hand, at the ring she wore every single day. I was adopted, she said quietly. When I was a baby. My parents told me when I was 8. They were wonderful people, loving and supportive. They died 5 years ago in a car accident. I'm sorry, Michael said, and he meant it. When I turned 18, the adoption agency gave me a few things that had been left for me. There wasn't much. A letter that just said I was loved, and this ring. That's all I know about where I came from. The adoption was closed. No names, no information, nothing. Michael felt his heart racing. Can I show you something? Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Michael pulled out his phone and found the photo he'd saved there. The one from his mother's envelope. He handed the phone to Sophia. She took it with shaking hands. The photo showed a baby, maybe 3 or 4 months old, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Around the baby's neck, hanging on a thin chain, was the ring. The same ring Sophia wore right now on her finger. Oh my God, Sophia whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. This is me? This is really me? I think so. The ring is identical. The timeline matches. My mother said she was 17 when she had to give up her baby. That would have been 40 years ago. How old are you? 39. My birthday is in March. Michael felt something tight in his chest loosen just a little. My mother got pregnant in the summer before her senior year. The baby was born in March. Sophia set the phone down on the counter and pressed both hands to her face. I can't believe this. I've looked for information about my birth family before. I tried when I was 20 and again after my parents died. I hit nothing but dead ends every time. And now you just walk in here for coffee? I've been coming here for 6 months, Michael said, every morning. I never noticed the ring before today. You must not always wear it? I started wearing it again a few weeks ago. I'd kept it on a chain around my neck for years, but recently I had it sized to fit my finger. Sophia looked at him, really looked at him, like she was searching his face for something familiar. Do I look like her? Your mother, I mean. Our mother, Michael corrected gently. And yes, you have her eyes. And her smile, when you're not looking at me like I'm crazy. That got a small, watery laugh out of Sophia. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. This is insane. I feel like I'm dreaming. I know the feeling. I've been useless at work all day. The other 2 customers had packed up and left at some point without Michael noticing. It was just the 2 of them now in the cafe. The close sign already flipped on the door. What do we do now? Sophia asked. I mean, we can't just assume we're siblings based on a ring and some matching dates. Can we? Michael had been thinking about this all day. We could take a DNA test. There are several companies that do sibling tests. It would take a couple weeks to get results, but we'd know for sure. Sophia nodded slowly. Okay, yes, we should do that. Because as much as I want this to be true, I don't want to get my hopes up if... I understand. I feel the same way. They stood there in silence for a moment, both processing what had just happened. Finally, Sophia spoke again. Would you want to sit down? I was about to lock up, but we could talk for a bit. I have so many questions. I'd like that. Sophia led him to a table by the window and poured them both coffee from the pot that was about to be thrown out anyway. They sat across from each other, and for a minute neither knew where to start. Tell me about her, Sophia said finally. Our mother. What was she like? Michael smiled, even though it hurt. She was strong. Really strong. She raised me on her own after my dad left when I was 5. Worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. She never complained. Never made me feel like I was a burden. He paused. But there was always this sadness in her. I didn't understand it when I was young. I thought maybe it was just because of my dad leaving. But when she was dying, she told me the truth. About you. What did she say? That giving you up was the biggest regret of her life. That not a day went by when she didn't think about you. She tried to find you, you know. When you turned 18, she contacted the adoption agency, asked if they could reach out to you. But they said your adoptive parents had requested no contact back when the adoption was finalized. Sophia's expression darkened. They never told me that. My parents never said anything about anyone trying to reach me. Maybe they were trying to protect you, or maybe they were afraid of losing you. Maybe. I'll never know now. Sophia took a sip of her coffee, though it had to be lukewarm by now. I had a good childhood. Really good. My parents loved me so much. But I always wondered, about where I came from, about whether someone out there thought about me. She did, every single day. Did she? Sophia's voice broke a little. Did she know you were looking for me before she died? I promised her I would. She made me swear it. I tried everything I could think of. I contacted the agency, looked into court records, even hired a private investigator for a while. But closed adoptions from that era are nearly impossible to crack open. I'd almost given up. Sophia reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. It was the first physical contact they'd had beyond her handing him coffee. I'm glad you didn't give up completely. Even if this turns out to be a massive coincidence, I'm glad we had this conversation. It's not a coincidence, Michael said with certainty. I know it's not. They talked for another hour. Michael told her about growing up, about joining the Navy, about his failed marriage to a woman who couldn't handle the deployments and long hours. Sophia told him about her childhood, about studying business in college, about her dream of owning her own bakery someday instead of just working in someone else's cafe. Wait, Michael said suddenly. Do you organize things by color? Sophia blinked. Yes, why? So did our mother. Drove my dad crazy, apparently. And I do it too. Books, files, everything. That's weird. I thought it was just me being particular. Are you afraid of birds? Sophia laughed. That's such a random question. But yeah, actually. They freak me out. All that flapping and the beady eyes, why? Our mother was terrified of birds. Wouldn't go near them. I inherited the same fear, though I try not to show it. Can't have a Navy commander running from pigeons. They kept finding little things like that, shared quirks and habits that seemed too specific to be random. The way they both tapped their fingers 3 times before making an important decision. How they both hated the smell of cinnamon but loved every other spice. Small things that felt like puzzle pieces clicking into place. By the time Michael left, it was after 9 o'clock. They'd exchanged phone numbers and made plans to order DNA testing kits the next day. Sophia walked him to the door. Thank you for coming back, she said, for having the courage to ask about the ring. I know that couldn't have been easy. Thank you for listening. For not thinking I was completely insane. Oh, I still think you might be a little insane, Sophia said with a small smile, but in a good way. Michael walked home under the streetlights, his mind buzzing with everything that had happened. 2 weeks ago, his life had felt predictable and routine. Wake up, run, get coffee, go to work, come home, repeat. Now everything felt different. Uncertain, but full of possibility. When he got home, he pulled out the old photo album where he'd stored his mother's picture. He looked at the baby in the yellow blanket, at the ring around her tiny neck, and felt tears prick his eyes. I think I found her, Mom. He whispered to the empty room. I think I finally found her. The DNA testing kits arrived 3 days later. Michael held the box in his hands and stared at it for a full minute before opening it. This simple test would answer the question that had haunted his mother for 40 years. In 2 weeks, he'd know for certain whether Sophia was his sister or just a stranger with a similar ring and a remarkable coincidence of shared quirks. He texted Sophia a picture of the kit. She responded immediately with a photo of her own box, adding 3 nervous face emojis. They'd agreed to send the samples in on the same day to keep things fair, to share the anxiety of waiting together. Michael followed the instructions carefully, swabbing the inside of his cheek and sealing the sample in the provided tube. It felt strangely anticlimactic. Something so simple to determine something so enormous. That evening, they met at a different cafe, one across town where neither of them was known. It felt important somehow to be in neutral territory. Sophia was already there when Michael arrived. sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of tea in front of her. "I already sent mine," she said as he sat down. "Dropped it in the mailbox on my way here, no backing out now." "Mine's going out tomorrow morning," Michael said. "The suspense is killing me already and we haven't even started the clock yet." Sophia laughed, but it was shaky. "I couldn't sleep last night. I kept thinking about what happens if the test comes back positive. Or worse, what happens if it comes back negative? If it's negative, then we're 2 people who had a strange encounter and some weird coincidences. We go back to our normal lives. But I don't want that anymore," Sophia said quietly. "Is that crazy? I've known you for less than a week, but the idea of going back to just being strangers feels wrong now." Michael understood exactly what she meant. In the 3 days since that evening at her cafe, they'd texted constantly. She'd sent him pictures of pastries she was testing for a potential bakery menu. He'd shared photos from his morning runs. They'd discovered they both loved terrible action movies and had spent an hour debating which one was the worst they'd ever seen. "It's not crazy," he assured her. "Whatever happens, we don't have to be strangers." But they both knew it wouldn't be the same if the test came back negative. The possibility of being siblings, of being family, had changed things. They couldn't just put that back in the box and pretend it hadn't happened. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael found excuses to see Sophia almost every day. Sometimes he'd stop by the cafe during her shift. Other times they'd meet for dinner or walk through the park near the waterfront. They were careful not to call these meetings anything specific. Not quite dates, but more than just casual hangouts. They existed in this strange in-between space, waiting for DNA results to tell them who they were to each other. Michael showed Sophia photos from his childhood. His mother pushing him on a swing set, both of them laughing. His first day in his Navy uniform, his mother standing beside him, proud and trying not to cry. Sophia studied each picture like she was memorizing them. "She looks kind," Sophia said, holding a photo of their mother from her 30s. "Like someone who gave really good hugs." "The best hugs," Michael confirmed. "Even when I got too old to want them, she'd still corner me for a hug whenever I came home on leave." Sophia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you. She would have been so proud of you." They talked about their lives in detail during those 2 weeks. Michael told her about deployments to the Persian Gulf, about the stress of commanding a ship, about the satisfaction of serving his country. Sophia described the morning routine of baking, how peaceful it felt to work with dough before the sun came up, how she'd been saving money for years to start her own business. "Why a bakery?" Michael asked one evening as they shared a pizza at a place near his apartment. "I like making things that make people happy," Sophia said simply. "When someone bites into a really good pastry, they smile. They forget their problems for a minute. The world feels a little better. I want to do that for people every day." Michael told her about the promise he'd made to their mother, how he'd spent hours searching online databases, how he'd driven to the county courthouse to search through records, how he'd finally accepted that some doors were locked forever, until that morning when he'd seen the ring. "Do you believe in fate?" Sophia asked. "I believe in coincidence," Michael said, "and probability, and statistics." That's such a military answer. "What do you believe in?" Sophia twisted the ring on her finger. "I used to think I believed in fate, that everything happened for a reason. But then my parents died and that belief kind of shattered. What reason could there possibly be for taking 2 good people away like that?" "I'm sorry. That must have been terrible." It was, still is sometimes. They were driving home from dinner, celebrating their anniversary. A drunk driver ran a red light. Sophia's voice was flat, like she'd told this story so many times that it had lost its emotional charge. "They died instantly. At least that's what the police told me. I hope it's true. I hope they didn't suffer." Michael reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "For what it's worth, I think our mother would have been grateful to them, for loving you the way they did." "That's a nice thought." The waiting was hardest at night. Michael would lie in bed and play out both scenarios in his head. The test coming back positive, confirming what he already knew in his gut to be true. Or the test coming back negative, making him question everything, making him feel foolish for hoping so hard. He wondered what his mother would think of Sophia. Would she see herself in Sophia's mannerisms, in the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, in the way she laughed at stupid jokes? Would she be proud of the person her daughter had become, even though she'd had no hand in raising her? Sophia called him one night around 11. He was still awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" he asked when he answered. "Nope." "You?" "Nope." "How many days left?" 4, maybe 5, depending on when they process the samples. Sophia sighed into the phone. "This is torture. Want to know something weird? Part of me doesn't want to know the results. Right now we exist in this space where anything is possible. Once we know for sure, that goes away. I get that, but I need to know. I've spent my whole life wondering about my birth family. I can't not know when the answer is right there." They talked for over an hour that night about nothing and everything. Sophia told him about a regular customer who always ordered decaf, but insisted it was because he liked the taste, not because of health reasons. Michael told her about a young sailor on his crew who was terrified of being at sea but was too proud to admit it. They laughed together and it felt easy and natural, like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. "Whatever the test says," Sophia said before they hung up, "I'm glad this happened. I'm glad you noticed the ring. I'm glad you were brave enough to ask about it." "Me too." The results were supposed to arrive on a Tuesday, but they didn't. Tuesday passed, then Wednesday. By Thursday, both Michael and Sophia were checking their emails obsessively. Michael refreshed his inbox so many times that his second-in-command asked if he was expecting new orders. The email finally came through on Friday afternoon at 2:30. Michael was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. He glanced down and saw the subject line, "Your DNA results are ready." His heart started pounding so hard he thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. He excused himself, claiming an urgent call, and walked quickly to his office. His hands were shaking as he called Sophia. "I got the email," he said when she picked up. "Me too. Just now." "Do we open them?" "Together," Sophia said. "Can you come to the cafe? My shift ends in an hour. I'll be there." That hour was the longest of Michael's life. He tried to work but couldn't focus on anything. He kept pulling up the email on his phone, his thumb hovering over the link to view the results. But he'd promised Sophia they'd do this together. When he finally got to the cafe, Sophia was waiting outside. She'd changed out of her work apron and looked pale but determined. "Ready?" she asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." They sat on a bench outside the cafe. The late afternoon sun was warm on their faces. People walked by, going about their normal days, completely unaware that two strangers were about to have their lives changed. Michael pulled out his phone. Sophia did the same. They looked at each other. "On 3?" Sophia suggested. "On 3. 1, 2. They both took a deep breath. 3. Michael clicked the link. The page loaded slowly, each second feeling like an hour. Then the results appeared on his screen in bold letters. 99.9% probability of sibling match. He looked up at Sophia. She was staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. "We're siblings," she whispered. "We're really siblings." Michael felt his own eyes fill with tears. "Yeah, we really are." Sophia let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She dropped her phone onto the bench and covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Michael put his arm around her and she leaned into him, crying into his shoulder. "It's real," she kept saying. "It's real, it's real, it's real." "I know. I know." They sat like that for a long time, holding on to each other, letting the reality of it sink in. 40 years of separation ended with a DNA test and a percentage. Michael thought about his mother, about the promise he'd made her, about how she'd carried this grief and hope for so long. "I wish she could know," he said quietly. "Our mom, I wish she could know we found each other." Sophia pulled back and wiped at her eyes. "Maybe she does. Maybe that's why you finally noticed the ring that day. Maybe she was watching out for us." Michael wasn't sure he believed in that sort of thing, but in that moment, he wanted to. He wanted to believe that somewhere, somehow, their mother knew that her children had found each other, that her daughter hadn't been lost forever, that the family she'd been forced to GI. Fiup was being pieced back together. So what now? Sophia asked, her voice still thick with tears. What do we do now that we know for sure? Michael smiled through his own tears. Now we figure out how to be siblings. We learn about each other. We build something new. I'd like that. They sat on that bench as the sun started to set, watching the world go by, no longer wondering who they were to each other. The answer was right there in black and white on their phones. Brother and sister. Family. Finally. The first few weeks after the DNA results felt like living in a dream. Michael and Sophia spent every free moment together, trying to make up for 40 years of being strangers. They had dinner 3 times a week. They called each other for no reason. They sent stupid memes back and forth late at night. They were learning how to be family. But there was still so much they didn't know. So many questions that couldn't be answered by a DNA test or a few weeks of conversation. Michael kept thinking about his mother's things, still packed away in a storage unit across town. He'd rented the space after she died, unable to throw anything away but not ready to go through it either. I think there might be more, he told Sophia one evening as they walked through the park. More information about you, I mean. My mom kept everything, every card, every letter, every piece of paper that seemed important. If she tried to find you, there might be records of it. Sophia stopped walking. You haven't gone through her stuff yet? I couldn't. After she died, I just boxed it all up. I told myself I'd deal with it eventually, but eventually never came. Do you want to look through it now? Together? Michael had been avoiding this for 2 years, but suddenly it felt like the right time. Like maybe he'd been waiting for Sophia without even knowing it. Yeah, I think I do. That Saturday, they met at the storage facility. The unit was small, just 10 by 10, but it was packed with boxes. Michael had labeled them all in his neat military handwriting. Kitchen, bedroom, office, personal. They started with the box marked personal. Inside were photo albums, cards, and small trinkets that had meant something to their mother. Sophia pulled out a snow globe from Boston, shaking it gently and watching the fake snow swirl. She liked to travel? When she could afford it, which wasn't often. Michael opened a photo album and found pictures from a trip to the Grand Canyon, their mother standing at the edge, smiling at the camera, the vast landscape behind her. I was 20 when we took this trip. She'd been saving for 2 years to afford it. They went through albums together, Michael narrating his childhood for Sophia. Birthday parties, school plays, baseball games. A whole life lived that Sophia had never been part of. Sometimes it hurt to look at the pictures, knowing that Sophia should have been in them too, that there should have been 2 kids blowing out birthday candles, not just one. In the 3rd box they opened, Sophia found something that made her gasp. It was a smaller box, wooden and worn with a delicate clasp. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all sealed in envelopes with dates written on the front in their mother's handwriting. What are these? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael picked up the envelope on top. It was dated March 15th, 18 years before Sophia was born. No, wait, he did the math again. March 15th was Sophia's birthday. This letter had been written on her first birthday. I think these are for you, he said. Sophia's hands trembled as she took the envelope. She looked at Michael. Should I read it? I think that's why she saved them. Sophia carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written on simple notebook paper, the ink slightly faded but still readable. She started reading aloud, her voice cracking on almost every word. My dear baby girl, you are 1 year old today. I wonder if you're walking yet, if you're saying any words, if you have any teeth. I wonder if you're happy and loved and safe. I wonder if you ever think about me, though you're probably too young to remember that I exist. I hope your parents are good to you. I hope they give you everything I couldn't. I hope you never feel the emptiness I feel every single day. Happy birthday, my sweet girl. I love you more than I can ever explain. Sophia pressed the letter to her chest and started crying. Michael put his arm around her shoulders, fighting back his own tears. There were more letters. One for every birthday from age 1 to age 18. Their mother had written to Sophia for 18 years, pouring her heart out to a daughter she'd never know. Letters full of love and regret and hope. Letters that asked questions that would never be answered. Is your favorite color blue like mine? Do you like to read? Are you good at math? Do you know how loved you are? She never stopped thinking about you, Michael said as Sophia read through them. Not for a single day. Sophia found a letter from Sophia's 10th birthday. I saw a little girl at the grocery store today who looked about 10. Dark hair and 2 braids, laughing at something her mother said. For just a moment I let myself imagine it was you, that I was the one making you laugh, that I gotta keep you, but then reality crashed back in, and I remembered that somewhere out there, you're 10 years old and I don't even know your name. In the letter from Sophia's 18th birthday, their mother's tone had changed. There was a determination in it that hadn't been there before. You're 18 today, an adult. I'm going to try to find you. I've been afraid for so many years, afraid of disrupting your life or causing problems. But I can't wait anymore. I need to know if you're okay. I need to at least try. Even if you don't want to meet me, even if you hate me for giving you up, I need to try. Sophia looked up at Michael. Did she really try to find me when I turned 18? She told me she did. She said the adoption agency wouldn't help her. Let's keep looking. Maybe there's more. In the next box, they found a file folder labeled Adoption. Michael's stomach dropped when he saw it. Inside were copies of letters their mother had sent to the adoption agency. Request after request, all politely worded but desperate underneath. Can you contact my daughter? Can you ask if she wants to meet me? Can you at least tell her I tried? The responses from the agency were formal and cold. They cited privacy laws and closed adoption agreements. They said the adoptive family had requested no contact. They couldn't help her without consent from all parties. I don't understand, Sophia said, reading one of the agency's letters. My parents never told me anyone was trying to reach me. They never said anything, but then they found something else. A letter from Sophia's adoptive parents to the agency, dated when Sophia was just 6 months old. It was short and to the point. They requested that no contact be made between their daughter and the birth mother, now or ever. They felt it would be confusing and harmful to the child. They wanted a clean break. Sophia stared at the letter for a long time. They made that decision for me. Before I was even old enough to have an opinion, they decided I shouldn't know my birth mother. They were probably scared, Michael said gently, scared of losing you. But that wasn't their choice to make. She tried to find me. Our mom tried and they blocked her. And they never told me. They let me grow up thinking she'd just abandoned me and never looked back. Michael understood her anger. It was his anger too. But he also understood how adoptive parents might feel threatened by a birth mother trying to make contact. Fear made people do things they might not be proud of later. My parents died 5 years ago, Sophia said, her voice hollow. I can't ask them why they did this. I can't tell them how wrong it was. I can't even get angry at them properly because they're gone. They sat in silence for a while, surrounded by boxes of a life that Sophia should have been part of, the letters their mother had written but never sent. The records of attempts to reach out that went nowhere, evidence of 40 years of separation that didn't have to happen. She must have been so hurt, Sophia said finally, to try and keep hitting walls, to write all these letters to me, knowing I'd never read them. But you're reading them now. That counts for something. Sophia picked up another envelope. This one dated just 2 months before their mother died. She opened it carefully. My dear daughter, I'm sick. The doctors say I don't have much time left. I'm writing this hoping that someday, somehow you'll read it. I want you to know that giving you up was not a choice I made freely. I was 17 and my parents gave me no other option. I want you to know that I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I want you to know that I tried to find you. I never stopped trying. And I want you to know that if you're reading this, it means you found your way to your brother. I made him promise to keep looking for you. I hope he succeeded. I hope you two find each other. I hope you can be the family I always wanted us to be. I love you. I will always love you. Even death won't stop that. Sophia was crying so hard now that she could barely breathe. Michael held her while she sobbed, his own tears falling silently. He thought about his mother in that hospital bed, making him promise to find Sophia. She'd known she was running out of time. She'd known she wouldn't be there when her children finally met. She knew, Sophia said through her tears. She knew we'd find each other somehow. She had faith in us, in the universe, in something. They spent the rest of the afternoon going through the boxes. They found more photos, more little pieces of their mother's life. A program from Michael's high school graduation, a news paper clipping about Michael making officer, a receipt from a psychic their mother had apparently visited, asking if her daughter was happy. She'd tried everything to feel connected to Sophia, even things that seemed desperate and foolish. By the time they left the storage unit, it was dark outside. They loaded some of the boxes into Michael's car, things Sophia wanted to take home and look through more carefully. The letters especially, those belong to Sophia now. "Thank you for sharing this with me," Sophia said as they stood by their cars. "I know it wasn't easy. It was easier with you here. I don't think I could have done it alone." Sophia looked at the boxes in Michael's car, at the physical evidence of their mother's love. "My parents lied to me. They kept this from me. I'm so angry at them right now." "You're allowed to be angry. You're also allowed to remember that they loved you. People who love us can still hurt us. Those two things can both be true at the same time. How are you so wise about this?" Michael shrugged. "I've had 2 years to think about it. To be angry at my dad for leaving, but also remember the good times before he did. To be sad that my mom is gone, but grateful for the time we had. Complicated feelings are normal." Sophia nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I should get home. I have an early shift tomorrow." "Hey, Sophia." "Yeah?" "Our mom would be really proud of you, of who you became, of the life you built. None of that was her doing, but she would have been proud anyway." Sophia smiled through her tears. "Thanks, Michael. That means a lot." As Michael drove home that night, he thought about the wooden box full of letters, about the love their mother had carried silently for 40 years, about the pain of being denied the chance to know your own child, about the mess of human emotions and choices that had kept his family separated, but they'd found each other anyway. Despite the closed adoption, despite the no-contact order, despite all the odds against them, they'd found each other over a cup of coffee and a silver ring. And maybe, wherever their mother was, she was finally at peace. 6 months after discovering the truth about their mother's attempts to find Sophia, life had settled into a new normal. Michael and Sophia talked almost every day. They had dinner together twice a week. They'd fallen into the rhythms that siblings develop, the comfortable shorthand of people who know each other well. But something was shifting in Michael's life. He'd been in the Navy for 23 years, and lately he'd been thinking more and more about what came after, about whether he wanted to spend the next 10 years doing the same thing, or whether he wanted something different, something more. He'd been eligible for retirement for 2 years now, but he'd never seriously considered it. The Navy was all he knew. It was his identity, his purpose. Walking away from it felt like stepping off a cliff into nothing. But then Sophia had shown him her business plan. They'd been having coffee at her apartment, and she'd pulled out a worn notebook filled with pages of ideas and calculations. A bakery of her own, she explained. Not just a cafe where she worked for someone else, but a real bakery where she could create the menu, design the space, build something from scratch. "This is really good," Michael had said, flipping through the pages. Detailed. "Well thought out. Have you talked to any investors?" "I don't need investors. I need about $60,000 for startup costs. I've saved $20,000 over the past 8 years. At my current rate, I'll have enough in about 6 more years. 6 years is a long time." Sophia had shrugged. "It is what it is. I'll get there eventually." That conversation had stuck with Michael. 6 years of waiting, of dreaming, of putting life on hold because the money wasn't there yet. He'd gone home and looked at his own bank account, his retirement account. 23 years of saving, of living simply because he was deployed so often that there was nothing to spend money on. He had more than enough. More than enough to help Sophia start her bakery and still have plenty left for himself. The idea had taken root in his mind over the next few weeks. What if he retired? What if he used his savings to help Sophia? What if they went into business together, brother and sister, building something new? It felt crazy and impulsive and completely unlike him. Michael was the guy who planned everything, who calculated risks, who never made a move without thinking it through from every angle. But this felt right in a way he couldn't explain. He called Sophia one evening and asked if they could meet for dinner. Something in his tone must have worried her because she immediately asked if everything was okay. "Everything's fine. I just want to talk to you about something." They met at a quiet restaurant near the waterfront. Michael waited until they'd ordered, until the server had brought their drinks, until he'd run through his speech in his head one more time. "I've been thinking about your bakery plan," he started. Sophia smiled. Yeah, what about it? I want to help you make it happen. Not in 6 years now. Michael, that's sweet, but I don't need help. I'll get there on my own. I know you will. But why wait? I have money saved. More than enough. We could be partners. Split the business 50-50. Sophia set down her water glass carefully. Are you serious? Completely serious. I'm thinking about retiring from the Navy. I've been thinking about it for a while, actually, and this feels like the right next step. You can't retire just to help me start a bakery. That's insane. I'm not retiring just to help you. I'm retiring because I'm ready for something different. The bakery is the something different, Sophia shook her head. You don't know anything about running a bakery. No, but I know about logistics, organization, and managing people. You know about baking and customer service and creating products people love. Between us, we have everything we need. Michael, this is a huge decision. You can't just throw away a 23-year career on a whim. It's not a whim. I've been thinking about this for weeks. And it's not throwing away anything. It's retiring with honor after serving my country. That's not something to be ashamed of. Sophia looked overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. They talked for hours that night, working through every concern Sophia had. What if the bakery failed? What if they lost everything? What if working together ruined their relationship? Michael had thought about all of these questions. He'd run the numbers, looked at similar businesses, calculated the risks. Yes, we might fail, he admitted. Most small businesses do. But we might not. And I'd rather take the risk with you than spend the next 10 years wondering what could have been. Why is this so important to you? Michael thought about his mother, about the letters she'd written to a daughter she never knew, about 40 years of separation that couldn't be changed or fixed, about finding Sophia and getting a second chance at family. Because we lost so much time, he said finally. We didn't get to grow up together. We didn't get to be kids together. We can't get any of that back. But we can build something new together, something that's ours. And I want that. I really want that. Sophia's eyes were shiny with tears. You're going to make me cry in this restaurant. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. Give me a week to think about it. This is huge, Michael, for both of us. Take all the time you need. That week was harder than waiting for the DNA results had been. Michael second-guessed himself constantly. Was he making a huge mistake? Was he being selfish? Pushing his own dream of working with Sophia onto her when she'd been planning to do this alone? But when Sophia called him on Friday evening, her voice was clear and certain. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's open a bakery together. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Michael put in his retirement papers and started the lengthy process of transitioning out of the Navy. Sophia gave notice at the cafe, though she worked up until the very last day to save every penny she could. Together they looked at properties, negotiated leases, designed layouts, and planned menus. They decided to name the bakery Grace's, after their mother. It felt right, honoring the woman who'd brought them both into the world even though she never got to see them together. The space they found was perfect. A corner location with big windows and enough room for a full kitchen in the back. It needed work, but Michael threw himself into renovations with the same focus he'd once applied to military operations. Sophia worked on perfecting recipes, testing and adjusting until every pastry, every bread, every cookie was exactly right. They argued sometimes, about paint colors, about menu pricing, about whether to open at 6 or 7 in the morning, but they always worked it out. They were learning how to be partners as well as siblings. Michael's retirement party was bittersweet. His fellow officers gave speeches about his service, his dedication, his leadership. He shook hands with men and women he'd served with for years. But when it was over, when he drove home in civilian clothes for the first time in 2 decades, he didn't feel sad. He felt free. Sophia met him at his apartment with champagne and takeout Chinese food. How does it feel? She asked. Terrifying, exciting, right? To new beginnings, Sophia said, raising her glass. To new beginnings. The bakery opened on a Tuesday morning in early October. Exactly 1 year after Michael had first noticed Sophia's ring. They'd sent invitations to everyone they knew, posted on social media, hung a banner outside announcing the grand opening. Michael stood behind the counter that first morning, wearing an apron that felt strange.